Welcome to Ignite Your Confidence for women in leadership who want to speak up and stand out. I'm your host, Karen Laus. Here you'll get all of the tips and tools that you need to stand out with unshakable confidence. Let's jump into today's episode. Well, we have Maria here today who is near and dear to my heart because of what she does. But rather than me tell, I want to share hers. We'll have her share her story. So Maria, I'll turn it over to you to tell us who you are.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much, Karen. I really appreciate it. My name is Maria Maldonado Smith. I am originally from Kentucky. I now live in sunny South Florida, although it hasn't been that sunny of late. But I am in the, I guess, motivational, inspirational space through goal setting and planning. I've been an avid goal setter since I was a little girl. And my journey really started when I was 8 years old and really has led me throughout a corporate career into now becoming an entrepreneur and starting my own business and working with individuals from small businesses to corporations, individually to the collegiate space, you name it. I am always wanting to spread my message of writing your goals down and creating a visual roadmap for them as well.
Well, and I absolutely am so grateful that I got to be part of one of your workshops recently. And, you speak to my heart around the vision board component in particular. And
Mhm.
I'm curious to dive into your story when you were a girl. What
Mhm.
made you interested in this? I'm curious. How did you get your passion around it?
Yeah, so I say that teachers are the heroes of our world because really the teacher has such an ability to impact and impart such a significant value on a child's life. And when I was 8 years old was really when I think a teacher of mine, unbeknownst to her, probably tapped into a potential path or something that ignited a fire in me that created that passion. And I'd always been an organized child for the most part. I mean, my room was definitely not depictive of that, but my backpack, just my trapper keeper, remember all that, tabbed out perfectly. Everything was color coded from a very young age. It
Oh
was just
my
my
gosh.
personality. So
Yeah.
my mom worked in property management and I would go to her office. And I think that also kind of tied into it. So I had a love of office stationery from a very young age too. So I'd love playing office in school. But on a particular day, my third grade teacher said, get out a piece of paper and write down the top three things that you want to do with your life. I mean, that really was the assignment. And I don't know if it was necessarily something that she intended for it to kind of ignite this passion or fire in me, but it did. I think it was
Wow.
honestly probably an assignment that she maybe did with every class, or even I think led into a bigger assignment, which was then we started actually talking about some of the professions or things that we wanted to do. And that aligned with having some class speakers come in. So I wrote down three things and I thought really in the long term at that time. But I wrote down I wanted to go to college because my dad is an immigrant from, or he's passed in 2018,
Mm.
but he was an immigrant from Argentina and came to this country at 26 years of age with an eighth grade education and did not speak but 4 words of English. So he taught himself how
Wow.
to speak the language. He built a life and a family and a career, 50 plus year career in the horse racing industry. And that was just something that was very important to me. So and my mom did not go to traditional college as well. A business went to a business college. So for me, going to a 4 year institution was hugely important at 8 because probably primarily guided by my parents, because
Sure.
they invested in our education. They were very focused on our education. They wanted us to get a good education. The
Yeah.
second thing was that I wanted to become Miss Kentucky because I had been watching the Miss America pageant and the Miss Kentucky pageant with my mom since I was probably 5, 6 years of age, that I actually recall that. And every year we would sit down in
Oh.
front of the TV and watch it. So I said, I want to be Miss Kentucky. And then the last one is I wanted to be a US Senator. And I don't know where Lily Bird that was coming from at that time. Although it did guide my collegiate path, ironically, because I was a political science major. So I don't know, somehow it rubbed off on me, but no plans to run for office.
I love it. Well, you have to tell the audience, did you make Miss Kentucky?
I
Yes,
did.
you
And I graduated
did.
from college. Yes,
That's
I
important
did.
to say. I love it. I love it. And what year was that?
That was in 2004.
Okay.
Yes.
Congratulations again.
Thank
That's
you.
very
Thank you.
exciting.
Yes.
Yeah.
'04 was
So
a banner year. I accomplished 2 of my 3 goals that I wrote on my piece of paper, and I always tell people a Post-it note changed my life because I transferred it onto a Post-it note, and it hung on my mirror till I was a senior in college, I mean, high school, about to go to college.
really? From
Mhm.
the time you were 8 years old?
Mhm.
That
I
is
mean,
so
it got
cool.
rewritten several times because it was
Yes.
the stickiness would would rub off and it would fall down, but we would just
Oh.
continue rewriting it, and I think there was something about keeping that up there and just visualizing that every day for, 10 years of my life after I wrote it, really, helped guide so much, and I don't know at that time that I really knew what it was doing. I just knew
Mhm.
that I would look at those goals every day and say, "Okay, I gotta make this happen."
That's so powerful, and that makes me think about, like, when I went to the workshop that you led about the different vision boards that I've had over the years and how fabulous it is throughout the years to go, "Yeah, I made that happen, I made that happen," and it is such a powerful way to track your progress. I am super curious about your experience in the whole leading up to being Miss Kentucky. I would love to talk about that
Yeah.
because there is so much wonderful things about that experience, which obviously you have had. And then there's so many things from a lot of us lay people on the outside going, oh my gosh, all that focus on the external and
Mhm.
how did you contend with that? And I'm super curious if you could break down any stereotypical barriers that people might have about pageantry in general. Like, is it just a beauty contest? And then why are we putting money into that as a society?
Yeah. So I always find it's that the misconception comes because people have never either attended a pageant or they see what they see on TV and they don't realize. And I liken it to anything. We always see the end product. So you always see the woman up there who is in the swimsuit, who looks flawless. She's in the gown. She's, you know, talking the talk, walking the walk, all that stuff. But what you don't see are the sometimes hundreds and hundreds of hours spent over a period of time. It took me 4 years to win Miss Kentucky. So I spent my
Wow.
entire collegiate career competing. And it's not just the fact that I was interview prepping, that I had a platform. So my younger brother has Tourette syndrome, and I worked with
Mm,
the Tourette syndrome, the National Tourette Syndrome Association, was partnered
wow.
with them. I was on boards. So I was on, as a college student, I was on a board seat, locally for chapters for mental health, for Tourette syndrome, for community action to create legislative efforts, et cetera. So I was participating in all of that as a college student. It's so much more than people think. Plus, I was working out, and
Oh
really
my
keeping
gosh.
keeping myself healthy, trying to work on my mental, emotional, physical, spiritual health, all of that, because it is grueling to compete. And then you put yourself out there. You put yourself out there to be judged by people in a subjective
Yes.
manner. So at the end of the day, if you don't win, you got to know what's here, and
Mm.
here, because if you don't walk away with that crown, I mean, spoiler alert, I did not win Miss America, but I still had a phenomenal experience, and I walked away from that still knowing who I was and knowing that
Wow.
all of that hard work was still going to pay off, maybe in a way that I couldn't understand at that time, but I knew that all of the work I had done could easily be translated and transferred over into, the corporate career, over into an entrepreneurial journey, because I had just learned so many things life skill wise that
Mhm.
most students, or most kids my age at that time just weren't working on.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you've been driven from a very early age, so it's very admirable
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
How did you deal with because I'm just thinking about being in the public eye. How did you deal with the criticism?
It's tough, and especially at such a young age. I mean, I think now they're saying that your brain is not even fully developed till you're almost 30, and so I think about that. I think back to the time I was 8, 19, 20, 21, 22 when I was competing, and it is tough. It's
Mm.
hurtful more than anything at that point, because it's so easy, and it's so easy to judge. You can make a comment very quickly, but if you don't know the story behind it, or you don't know anything, all you're doing is just passing judgment on something that you have no clue what you're talking about. And I think that was the hard part for me, was knowing that I had spent a lot of time and work, and then yet having people still maybe not find that value or see that value or say, yeah, but you just didn't really resonate with me. It's like, oh,
Oh,
wow,
oh,
okay. Because I tried really hard, and
yes.
that's where it is. That's where you have to have that inner, just that inner confidence and inner worthiness,
Hmm.
and listen, I'm not to say that it was tough after I lost, at Miss America. I remember taking some time to just reflect and think back to what could I have done differently? Could I have done anything differently?
Hmm.
And the bottom line is, after a little bit of reflecting and journaling, you realize that you did everything you possibly could. And all ever told myself was just to leave everything that I had out on stage. And if I did that, then I could not feel, upset. I mean, I could still feel upset, but like I could feel confident that I had done the best that I possibly could.
Right, right. Absolutely. That's amazing. And where do you think you got that inner confidence from? Because here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking
Mhm.
about the women listening that
Yeah.
are doubting themselves or feeling like I'm not good enough, or so many of us, of course, we all want to be liked, that whole people pleasing component. And, if I say it this way, people will like me and that kind of thing. So I know I just threw a bunch of stuff at you
Yeah.
right there. But how, in general, would you say that you have had that inner confidence, or where does that come from that you could impart to others?
Mhm. My mom, I mean, that's
Mm,
immediately who comes to mind. My mom was and is still, just such a powerful force and representation of being a strong woman. My mom has always been very convicted in the way that she feels. She's passionate about the things that she's passionate about, the causes that she supports. And regardless of whether we align or agree on things, her ability to say, you need to become who you are supposed to become and allowing
mm,
that does so much for a child. And I think looking back now, being a mom myself to a 15-year-old young woman, I find myself saying, I have to do the same for her because I was allowed to explore who I wanted to become, what I was, trying to become and figure things out on my own. And there's so much confidence in that when you're given autonomy and independence as a child,
yeah.
because it allows you to figure things out for yourself. And I think that's something that societally, unfortunately, I think we've done a disservice to some of our children by fixing everything for them and not allowing them to make mistakes and to recover from it, and not allowing them to kind of find their own confidence because there's such power in that.
There sure is. And what a fortunate, wonderful thing that your mom gave you. That is so powerful. And then you can pass that on. That's
Yeah,
great.
absolutely. And I think it
Yeah.
also showed me too that I needed to surround myself with women like her that were
Mm,
strong and confident in who they were too. And so my friends that I've had since, childhood and even my chosen adult friends, they're all confident women and we all bring something to our friendship or relationship that is unique, and we know the value that we bring, but we also are willing to support each other, and I think that's rare. And I think when you find it, you have to hold on to people like that because you need to keep them
yes.
alive.
Yes, exactly. Well, I too have been fortunate in that. And it's so interesting to me how you hear so many times about women that are not supporting each other, or that women, sometimes I've heard things like, well, women are the worst. And I thought, this is so fascinating. It really wasn't until the last few years that I had really quite realized that. I know that might sound a little bit strange because, probably like you, I've been around these situations where women really support each other. So I haven't
Mhm.
had that experience. And yet, the more work that I do in the world, the more I see, wow, this is a really fortunate thing. And we need to spend more time focusing on how we can support each other rather than cut each other down, which thankfully I haven't been around, but I know it's out there.
It is out
And
there, and I've had instances in my corporate career where I was met with that, and
mm,
it was always very disappointing, but I also just learned to stay at a decent distance from people like that.
and
I
that's a
know.
smart thing. Yeah.
Yes, I'm like, I know when to leave well enough alone.
Yes.
So,
Set the boundaries that you need to set, right?
exactly.
Well, you've had so much success and you have so much of this internal confidence, which many people don't. I'm so grateful that that has been your experience. Has there ever been a time when you wish that you had spoken up, but you didn't, and what that was like?
Yes, and I know you and I had briefly chatted about this, beforehand, and it's something that as I kind of continue my journey and really open myself up to help young women, I want them to understand because I'm an extremely optimistic and positive person, but I also choose to be that way because I feel like it is such a
Yes.
mindset. I feel like optimism and happiness and is such a choice and it can be such a mindset. But I wish I would have spoken up at a time in my life when I was put in a very vulnerable situation. And in 2014, I was assaulted on a work trip, and it was a
Mm.
situation that, of course, was completely out of my control. At the time, I wasn't necessarily sure of that because, I wasn't being told that.
And you,
And
just to be clear, you weren't sure that you were technically assaulted?
so
Or
no, 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 I knew that I was, but I'm
okay,
saying
because
that,
sometimes people say, yeah, they go, well, I'm not sure if
yeah.
it was or it didn't feel right, but yeah. So say more
Mhm.
about that because I want to be
Yeah, yeah.
clear.
No, no, no. I knew. I knew.
Okay.
It was more so that I was then harassed by the person who assaulted me pretty consistently for about 6 months afterwards.
Oh
So
no.
there was a lot of that kind of, victimization, almost saying like, you're at fault. You are the reason
Oh,
this happened. That, and so that's what I mean. So I bottled a lot of that up for a while, a very long time, and then finally had kind of one of those moments where like we said, like I had lost confidence. I had just lost footing of everything that I knew to be any stability in my life. It just was at that point. And I think I found myself looking even at my children, at my husband, like just different things and saying, like kind of questioning what in the world, like how is this allowed to happen? Just different things. And then, of course, you have your moments, and I had my moment, and I realized then that I needed to seek help. So I did, and I went through therapy. I went through EMDR. I went through all of the process. Went to all of the stuff to do all of the work. But when we were, talking earlier, I said, "Gosh," at the time, I kept saying, I didn't want to speak up because it was very personal, very private, and I was like, I don't want to put my family through this. I just don't want to go down that
sure.
road. I want to protect them at all cost, more so than protecting myself, which ironically, in the work that I do with women, that's what we do, right?
Mm,
Because we think
mhm.
about everyone else except for ourselves. And we
Right.
think, what is this going to do to them? But it was killing me as well on the inside. And just my whole level of confidence evaporated for a period of 2 to 3 years. And I think the things that I could control I would cling to because that was my safe space and that was my comfort. That was my way of saying I actually can feel confident in this moment because I can control this situation. And that situation was completely out of my control. And so therefore, how do I get back to a space where I'm me again? And that's really
Mm.
why I sought therapy, was so that I could get back to that space. I need to get back to the point where I can be me. And I was able to do that. So I had a phenomenal therapist, and it
Wow.
took a lot of work. And I always say too that I grew up in a house where my father's a Argentinian man, Latin man. You think about things from that perspective, and it just, therapy was for weak people,
Right. I
and God love him. Like it just, he didn't mean it. It's just the culturally, it's like you just deal with it. And
yes.
so it was tough to have kind of that mentality and growing up with that, and then realizing, but I do need help. I really, actually, really need help. I can't get through this without help. And so that taught me a valuable lesson, because it taught me that I have to speak up when I'm drowning, and that
Yeah.
has helped me in so many aspects of my life. And I think back just to my motherhood journey. I think back to a lot of things where I wish I would have spoken up. I wish I would have spoken up when, my first daughter was born, and same thing, was just kind of drowning and wasn't really, it wasn't flourishing and wasn't enjoying motherhood because I didn't know what was going on in all of this. And there was
Mm,
just so many things. So
yeah.
at the same time, I think that life moments like that have a way of, wow, they have a way of shifting your perspective to end up being, oh, I wouldn't say I hate to say like the word beneficial, but like you learn from it. You learn to use
Absolutely.
you learn to
Yeah.
use it for what it is worth and
Mhm. Mhm.
what it gives you. But it's taken a long while to get past that
Wow.
point. But now that I have, I think that's where whenever I work with women or speak with women, it's just one of those things where I want them to know that they are believed, because I think
Yeah.
that was the biggest piece of also what I was dealing with too was, am I going to be believed?
Mm.
And there was a fear, and that's ultimately why I didn't speak up.
Wow. Well, first of all, Maria, thank you for your vulnerability and thank you for the
Yeah.
example that you are to others. That's really, really powerful. I would love to go back when you said you had my moment and then you changed. Can you tell us about that moment? I'm thinking about the woman that might be in this situation right now and she hasn't had that moment yet.
Mhm,
Can you describe that for us or bring us into that moment that made you realize I have to do something?
mhm. Yes, I can, and I vividly remember where I was and when that happened, when my moment happened. I'm very spiritual, I'm very faith-based. I had been praying from the moment that that happened. I mean, even before that too.
Mhm.
So I didn't want that to, I guess, decrease or affect my relationship with my creator. That was something that I was always like, gosh, I'm trying to make reason of this, sense of this. What do I do? But at the
Mm.
same time, I was using a lot of coping mechanisms, so to speak. I was traveling
Sure.
alone for work still, so I was scared to death. I was just so anxiety
Oh,
ridden more than anything, fearful that it could happen again, or that every person was almost kind of out to get me. And so, like I said, I went through about a series of about 6 months where it just, you have your moments, you spiral, you're
yeah.
kind of grasping for everything. And I was driving on the interstate in Atlanta, and I remember just gripping the steering wheel and being like, I know I need help, but like I don't know how. And it's one of those things where I was kind of just talking to myself, but talking to God, whatever, just kind of getting it out there. Like, I know
Right.
that I'm a wreck, like literally in my mind, just going through and saying like, you are a wreck right now. You're barely
Aw.
keeping it together, and you've got to get it together. And I knew that. And at that moment, I looked up and there was a billboard along I-75. And it said, do you need help? And it had a number for like a therapist group.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I was like, holy crap. If that is not a sign that I need to call this number and get some help, I don't know what it is. That is literally the smack in the face that I needed. And so I
Wow.
called that number, and later that week, actually, because I was headed to the airport.
Mhm.
And later that week, I found myself in front of a therapist. So
Wow.
that was my moment. That was my moment. And
Thank you.
whenever I recount that, it's one of those things where whenever I doubt my faith, as a lot of us do, and
Mm,
multiple times
sure.
during our journey, I recount moments like that, and I think, you know what? No, someone's looking out for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. And for the women that are listening that might
Mhm.
be in this situation before that moment occurs, what encouragement would you offer or advice would you offer to them?
Ooh, um, I know everyone says it. I mean, of course, ask for help, but I think up until that point, it was the mental berating that I would do on a daily
Mhm.
basis. Just, looking at myself in the mirror and just not feeling that confidence. I would say, know that one, that's normal. Because I think that's the other thing too, is
Yeah.
we think all the things, we feel all the feelings, and that's okay. I would say
Mhm.
the one thing I wish I would have done sooner was pick up a pen and start writing,
Ah,
because that was one of the things that my therapist said to me. Actually, probably wasted the first 2 sessions because I didn't say anything at all. And then
oh,
finally, she said, I just need you to write it. Why don't you just write it? And then if you don't even want to read it out loud to me, just give it to me and I can read it. And then at least we have a jumping off point,
yes. Oh,
because I
that's
can
good.
tell. And I think that so much in the vision space and in the goal setting space too. That's why less than 3% of people write their goals down, because we're so afraid to speak it. We're so afraid to get it
Is that
out.
why it's a fear for
It's a
most
fear.
people?
It's a fear.
Interesting.
Absolutely.
And
It's a
what
fear.
is the fear about, do you think, for people?
I think it's a fear of failing, a fear
Okay.
it's a fear of putting it out there and it not being accepted. When you're putting your goals
Yeah.
out there, you're putting your dreams out there, your heart, when you're in therapy and you're putting something out there, are you gonna be judged? Are you gonna be,
Yeah.
and as someone who'd never been, I didn't know if I was gonna be judged or told to,
Right. Right. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
see you
absolutely.
later.
Did you have
So
any concerns about your job? Like, did you stay in the same job?
I did for a little while longer and then I left.
Okay. Okay.
I was actually able to leave that corporation and come back a couple years later.
Mhm.
And I finished my corporate career there. But yeah, I mean, it was something that I ended up only telling a couple people, that were just very close. But
Mhm.
ultimately, it was something that I just largely kept to myself.
Okay.
And then,
Yeah. Yeah.
close family of mine, and friends
Sure.
were
Yeah,
made
it's not
aware.
like you didn't go public or go after him or anything like
Right.
that, and yeah, yeah. What made you choose that, just out of curiosity,
To not?
to not go after him?
Oh gosh, like, where do we begin, right? Um, at the time, I had young children, uh,
Okay.
and I think it was largely due to that. It was
Yeah.
largely due to the
Yeah.
fact that I had young children, and
Yeah.
this wasn't something that I wanted to put out there. It wasn't something I wanted
Mhm.
to put them through. I didn't wanna put them
Mhm.
through it, and yeah,
Yeah, that
that
makes
ultimately
sense.
was it.
Well,
Mhm,
and thank you, Maria. I know I'm
mhm.
I'm leaning in a little bit, but I'm thinking
Yeah,
about
no,
all the
no.
people that this is helping, and to
Mhm,
know that your story is really powerful. So, makes me emotional to think about it as well. So, thank you for sharing your heart.
mhm. Yeah.
Well, pivoting a little bit, talking about what you do, can you share a little bit more about it? Because I just personally love what you do, and I'd love to hear any success stories that come to mind for you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love what I get to do as well. And I have an opportunity to empower people through their own goals and dreams, which is such an amazing opportunity and job
Yes.
to do. And I think that one thing I find consistently is that we all have these goals and dreams, but we don't take enough time for ourselves to develop them. And what I never wanted, and I think this also was a byproduct of therapy, was that I didn't want to get to the end of my life or the end of my career and look back and say, gosh, I really wish I would have done
Mm,
these 4 or 5 things. And like I said, for me, goal setting has always been very helpful because it's helped me to get from one thing to the next. But what I really started to peel away throughout just developing out my own process was that I'm really not trying to cross an item off, to just check something off the list.
yeah.
I wanna become a more whole person. I wanna become a more
Oh,
authentic version of me, and if I can do that through actually using goals, but smaller, more bite-sized goals, and the visualization process, attached to it, if I can do that to create an opportunity for people to see their dreams to reality and see them through to fruition, then let's do it. That's my focus. So, I just started leaning into why? Like, why do people not write down their goals? Less than
Mhm,
3% of Americans write their goals down. Only
mhm.
1% of them work on them, daily, actively. And,
Gosh.
it's been said that the difference between millionaires and billionaires is that millionaires write their goals down. They do write them down daily, but billionaires are writing them down daily and they're tweaking them. They are refining, they're redirecting, they're figuring out what works and doesn't work for them and creating another pathway to success.
Amazing.
And so I, living in South Florida now, I want to live the yacht life with my
Yes.
with my family and my girlfriends, and I want to be, as successful as I can be, whatever that definition looks like, because it's different for
Mhm.
everyone.
Yeah.
And so I always challenge people to write their goals down. I say, let's just start by writing your goals down. Get them out of your head, off your heart,
Mhm.
put them out on paper. Because when you do that, there's such power in it. Because now you can look at them and now you can see, whew, wow, I did it. I actually put them on paper. Now I'm gonna start working towards them. And then we work through a process where we outline what those goals look like. We refine what those goals look like so that they can actually achieve them. Because oftentimes we think up here, like when I was
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
8 years old and say I want to go to college, it's like, but I'm here and I'm trying to get up here for, to accomplish this goal. So we kind of stair step it back down, figure that out so that we can make our way back up the stairway to accomplishment. And then from there, we add a visual component of it because vision boards are so powerful because
Yes.
80 to 90% of us are visual learners.
So amazing. I absolutely love it. And what I was also really impressed by with you, and for anybody listening, definitely reach out to Maria because you brought all the stats behind it. That's what I thought was really great. There's a lot of people that do vision boards, and I mean, I love to do that visioning work with clients as well, but you're really the expert in it. I mean, you've got all the stats behind it. And so you really combine that beautiful combination of the science and the research backing with that power of imagination and visualization. So I think it's fantastic. Well, I feel like I could talk to you all day, Maria, and I realized, oh my gosh, we're already at at time.
I
So
know.
tell us well, first of all, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like me to ask or that you would like to share?
I would just say that I always tell people if you haven't tried a vision board, don't knock it till you try it. It's kind of like what we were talking about
Yes.
earlier with pageantry. It's like if you've never gotten to know a pageant girl and what she's about and everything she stands for and is working towards, get to know her first before you start
Yes.
attaching those judgments. And honestly, I could say that for everything going on in society right now, right? We need to get to know each other
True.
better.
Yes,
We
we
need to
do.
lean in and understand what we're doing. So I say, try it. Just the first step I always tell people is get out a Post-it note and write down the 3 things that you're working towards.
I
Doesn't
love
have
that.
to be even 10 years from now. In 90 days, what do you want to accomplish?
Mhm.
Stick that on your mirror. Look at that every single day, and then slowly start putting together an action plan centered around that. And then if you feel so inclined, get out a visual representation, find a magazine you like, find some images online. You can put together a digital version of that, but it needs to be
Mhm.
something you can see every single day because it's so powerful. And I promise people all the time, if you start to welcome that into your world, there is actually something psychologically based that starts to rewire and train our brains to see those things out in the universe. But we first have to write it down because until we get it on paper and we start creating that action plan and that roadmap, it's a little bit harder for us to make some of that seen in our reality, in our world.
Yes.
But that's
Well,
what I
I'm a
say.
fan. I'm
Try
a
it.
huge fan. It's worked for me too over the years.
I
All
love
right.
it.
Well, Maria, how can we reach you?
Yes. Well, I'm on Instagram. And so I'm on Instagram. My website is mmsconsultingfirm.com. So you can reach me there. You can send an inquiry. I'm starting the blog back up again. I had a
Ooh.
former one that I'm starting to integrate with my new site. So I enjoy writing. I love writing about tips and tricks on how to accomplish goals quicker or just, to lean in, prioritize, set boundaries, etc. And I'm also on Facebook, LinkedIn, um, TikTok. I'm trying to think where else.
And
Twitter.
we'll have all your links in the episode.
I'm all over the
Absolutely.
place. Yes.
Yay, you are. I love it. Well, thanks again, Maria. So grateful to have you. And thanks so much for sharing your story.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And that's a wrap of another episode of Ignite Your Confidence. I'm your host, Karen Laus. Thank you so much for listening. If you loved today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. It helps other people find the podcast faster, and it certainly helps me. If you're interested in more tips and tools around confidence, please join me over in my Facebook group called Ignite Your Confidence with Karen Laus. Remember, you too can stand out with unshakable confidence.